Good morning, good morning. Kimberly here. I'm an ER nurse of 25 years. I am just doing a little get ready with me, and I want to talk about what's going on with the Karen Reed trial. I have been watching today's testimony with Jen McCabe, and I've got a couple things to say. I would like to talk about the dog that got brought up today, the dog. I have some unique perspective on police dogs, as well as something that hasn't been talked about much, and it is the location of where John Okeefe was found. Again, my condolences go out to the Okeefe family. I still just, my heart breaks for them. I watch a mother sitting in the stand, in the courtroom, and I just, as a mom myself of sons, my heart breaks for her, and I don't know that I would be strong enough to sit and listen to this for almost 2 years going on with two trials. So my heart goes out to all of you, and my prayers are with you. I feel terrible that John Okeefe did not get justice so far in this, regardless of whether Karen is found guilty or not. I think that justice was, long ago. Any type of justice or people who are accountable being brought to trial seems to have been left out the gates a long time ago. And that's just my opinion. I did not watch the first trial. I did not come into this long ago, as a lot of people had. So I'm kind of listening with fresh eyes. So, like the jury, I am listening for the first time to testimony. So I have a lot of questions, probably like they do. So you're going to hear it from my perspective, but I also want to talk about those things like the dog, like the property lines, like where John Okeefe was found. If I was a juror, these are thoughts I would have, and some of it is my own unique perspective, and some of these jurors may have their own unique perspective that the prosecution and the defense may not be aware of, because everybody comes into a jury position with their own stuff that they bring to it uniquely. So I don't know what the jury box is made of, but we're going to find out. So I'm going to get ready. And I got to tell you, for those of you that know me, I'm going in with my naked palette again. And as I actually put my glasses on, I was looking at the colors. I had to giggle because seriously, the names of this palette, you couldn't have named a palette more Karen Reed trial than this Naked 3 palette. Actually, today I'm going to be doing Buzz, which we know a lot of them were buzzed, and Jen McCabe is on the stand. So we have Liar, and then we have Mugshot. So there you go. So I'm going to go ahead and start going in with Buzz, because that's how the evening started. But again, I want to talk about the dogs. The dog, Chloe, that was at the Albert's house. Now, I didn't know until this go around that they had a washout police dog in their home, which makes sense because, you don't really know me that well, but I will say this. Come from a law enforcement family. My father was in law enforcement, so I have that unique perspective as well. He has passed away, and had he still been alive right now, I would not talk about his career in any way. I wouldn't even be discussing it on this channel, because there were things that we did not talk about. But I am going to talk a little bit about it right now. My dad worked in law enforcement. He actually was I won't say his title. I will just say that his area of expertise was narcotics. And when I was very young, we got our first family dog, which in fact was a police dog that was considered a washout dog. And if you don't know what that is, they don't know if they call them washout dogs now or what they call them, or even what the proper terminology is. When the dogs are being trained for law enforcement to be canines on their canine unit, a lot of these dogs, are usually purebred German Shepherds, or they have other breeds that they use now a lot. But at the time that this was going on for my family, it was back in the 80s, my dad's department was using German Shepherds, and we had our first German Shepherd that was a washout dog. Now, what is a washout dog? Doesn't mean that anything is uniquely wrong with the dog. We're going to go in with Liar, a little bit of Liar, in honor of Miss McCabe, because that's the vibe I'm getting from her. I don't know anything about her. I just know that that's just the vibe. The washout dogs, all it means is that there is something in the early part of the training that the dog is either showing personality traits or something that that they're not passing one or more of their sections of their training. Now, typically, this can happen in our family. This happened really early on. Our dog was probably 4 or 5 months old when he washed out. And my dad, at the time wanted a dog for protection. This is what we did back in the 80s. You didn't really have like security systems like now. People did, but it was just less common. Having a large animal like a German Shepherd for someone in law enforcement was also not uncommon, because it was it was ample protection. We had a very large backyard and side yards in our home, and we lived in a larger 2-story home in the suburbs of Los Angeles. And my dad was very keenly aware of the, security implications that could go on with being in law enforcement in some of the cases he worked. So he wanted a dog like that in our house and in our yard. And nothing can protect you more than like having a big giant dog that people are absolutely terrified by. And there were things that my dad used to say, like, don't tell people he's a police dog, people might get freaked out. But at the same time, he wanted to know that, people to know that we had a big dog and that dog was, protecting our home. So, anyway, the dog that we had was considered a washout dog. Again, I said we got him at about 4 or 5 months old. He became our family pet. But there's things about police dogs in their training that the lay public may not understand. One, they are going through sorry, I keep hitting my glass that's over here, and I'm going to try not to do that. They go through some really intense training from the get-go when they are like new puppies. I got to blend this in because this is... So police dogs, in their training, they go through some really intense stuff in their training. And this is repetitive, taught behavior that gets drilled into these dogs 8 hours a day, 7 days a week while they're getting trained. And they're unique to a non-trained police dog. It's got a little weird over here, so I'm going to try to fix it and buff it out. One of which is they are taught grip and hold techniques. I will definitely get into that in a few minutes. I'm going to hold off on the grip and hold techniques for now. So the police dogs, our dog, and here's what I remember as a kid with our dog. One, nobody was walking into our house unannounced without that dog being front and center. There were, especially in the evening time. And I listened to Jen McCabe talking about how she just waltzed into the home, walked straight through the unlocked front door. Absolutely not. That is absolute. I could see if she had said, oh, I had a key or something else, but even in family, police officers don't, and people in law enforcement aren't giving away keys to their home, even to family. It's just a no. There's stuff in their own training that they're taught to do and not do, and it's just not something that's done. Our aunts and uncles and everybody else didn't have keys to our house, I can tell you that much. But nobody's walking through that front door without the dog being right there. If it was kids or whatever, like as kids we knew, like as long as someone was with us walking in the house, you're golden. But if you're walking into our house without being announced or being introduced to the dog, that was going to be a problem. And so typically when anyone would come to the house, they would, even if it was my sister's boyfriends when we were teenagers, my sister had to bring them in. The dogs were more on alert with adult men. Anyone that was of size, the dog would be protective. And I will tell you, I remember one of my sister's boyfriends that she brought to the house, and she brought him in more casually. And that dog, he didn't lunge for the boyfriend. What he did was he cornered him. And what they do is they will corner someone. They will sit and they will wait for the owner to come. If they feel it's maybe a partial threat, but not a fatal threat or any kind of like more imminent threat, depending on what the person does. If they stand in the corner, and then they hear the owner or one of us, introducing the dog or telling the dog it's okay, it's different. But if somebody just walks in, like my sister's boyfriend did with her, he immediately went up, cornered him with barking, sat and looked and intently stared at him and waited for a response from us. So that's something that did happen. It didn't happen a lot. It just happened when there was a new person that wasn't brought in the way that the dog was trained to have someone brought into our home. This may seem threatening to some families to have a dog like this. In our family, this is something we were taught. We were taught to do things a little differently just because of what my dad did and the risks involved with his job. So we also knew and were trained on how to deal with our dog. At nighttime, our dog, now, we never created the dog. Nobody that I know of that has ever had a canine or any police dog that I know of ever creates their dog if the dog's job is to protect the home. And typically a canine's job, even if it's a police dog, living with a family, unless the family has a different set of rules that they're trying to work with the dog, and usually they're not. They're usually using that dog as protection as well as a pet. We kept the dog out at night, and our dog, literally, we called it patrolling. He patrolled the house all night long. He did his job. He would go room to room, and he would occasionally settle down. And the way that our house worked is you would come in, and then there was stairs straight up to shotgun to the top of the house, and then there was a lower unit, and there was a basement. The basement door was typically closed. It wasn't somewhere we didn't like use our basement. It wasn't a huge finished basement, so we weren't down there much. But at night, the dog would patrol the house, and you would hear him about every hour or two. You'd hear his collar. He had a chain collar, and you'd hear the clinking. And I remember it was like a comfort, too. I would hear the dog get up. He would go room to room. He would check in on each of us, come sniff our faces, check the beds, go in each room, check each person, go back around, do a patrol around the house, come back up the stairs, and he would sit at the top of the stairs where he could watch the door. And the dog knew where the access points of the house were. The dog knew that if he sat at the top of the stairs, he could see everything in the house. See, his family was upstairs that he needed to protect, and the main entrance was watched. If nobody would be walking in up those stairs without facing that dog, and if anybody came in the middle of the night, I don't care who you were, that dog was going to be up in your face. It didn't mean he was going to attack you if he didn't perceive a threat, but that dog was going to bark his head off. He was going to come down, and he was going to stop you from going up the stairs. So Jen McCabe saying she just waltzed in that house, went up the stairs, went into the Alberts home, and woke them up. Either one, I don't think she cared that the dog was there or not. The dog wasn't there. And if the dog wasn't there, what the hell is going on? So where was the dog is what I want to know. Two, she had to have known that. Any family member, it's your sister. Like, you know your family. You know when a dog is going to, you know what your family's dogs are. So I don't buy this. She sounds like she was close. They lived in the same town, all of that. And I don't know what was going on. This whole thing just seems really weird to me. So, all right, this is about the part of the video I've started stopping to put my eyeliner on, and then I can proceed on with the rest of my makeup. So I'm going to stop this video. We're going to put the rest of the eyeliner on, the liquid, because I always have a trouble with it. And then I'm going to come back. Okay, so I am back. I got the eyeliner on, and I'm going to continue to chat. I got to put some concealer on, and then I'll put my makeup on the rest of the face. Okay, so what I was talking about before was the dog, Jen McCabe, her just waltzing in, all of that. I don't buy that she was able to either just do that, or two, that she should have been worried about that dog. She knows her sister. You know how these dogs are, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. Where was the dog? And if the dog wasn't was in a crate or something else, which hasn't been brought up, I don't know. I haven't heard anything about it. What's the deal with that? Two, this man that owns this home is a longtime veteran in law enforcement. The other thing I saw on the flagpole, and I don't know if anyone else picked up on this, but I sure did, because I am a Marine Corps mama, is if you look at that flagpole, there is a Marine Corps flag on that flagpole. And what does that mean? This man is probably was probably infantry or something else, and went into law enforcement, as a lot of them do. I'm not going to say probably. I don't know any law enforcement professional, police officer, anyone who's in law enforcement and was in the military or Marine Corps who isn't sleeping armed to the teeth with something near the bed. Okay? And I'm not saying in the nightstand or anything else, but usually I don't want to get struck on here on YouTube for saying that word. They have a pew-pew, and they have it close in proximity to where they're sleeping. And if you are in the family, usually you're going to know that it's not safe to just walk into someone's house and wake them from a dead-ass sleep if there's somebody who has one at the bedside. You know better than to do that. So one, you're dealing with law enforcement. Two, what the hell's up with the doors not being locked? I've never in my entire life, never once met anyone in law enforcement who would go to bed with their doors unlocked. That is absolute bullshit. And I'm calling bullshit on that because that's something they are ingrained to do. I mean, even in our home, if we were coming home after hours or in the evening, I mean, the sun went down. Sure, my mom might have had the doors unlocked for part of the day or something while we were going in and out as children, but at nighttime, that's a no. And if after dusk, those doors were locked. And my parents were very strict about curfews, number one, and two, using a key when it's after dark. Okay, so I just really, that's highly suspicious. I don't care what town they live in, that someone in Brian Albert's senior's position would leave his doors unlocked and sleep at night. I've just never heard of that. That is absolutely insane. And it's not like he's just a low-ranking official. He's higher up he's a detective. I mean, you're a detective. You see the worst of what happens with people. You know damn well that you should not be sleeping with your doors unlocked. And I don't think he did. So that's not adding up for me either. So there's that. So there's a couple things right there. Doors unlocked, the dog. The other thing that when we were growing up, like as kids, like we knew even breaking our curfew a little bit was risky business because we couldn't always just like, if it was midnight, which when we got a little older, our curfew was midnight. When I was 16 and dating, my curfew went to midnight, and my parents could be in bed at night on a weekend. They weren't going to stay up till midnight waiting, although my dad often did if I was out on a date. The doors would be locked and we could come in with the key, but we knew that if we were coming in even a minute past curfew, the dog was going to rat us out because the dog freaking knew when we were supposed to be home. And although the dog wouldn't typically bark at us, what he would do when he would clear the click of the door and the key, he knew it was one of us, he would do the boof, boof, and he would go into my parents' room and wake them up. I don't know how my dad trained the damn dog to do that, but the dog did. I say damn, I love that dog so much. Now, that dog would alert my parents once one of us was coming home. So my parents, even if they went to bed at night, they knew that they could fall asleep and the dog was going to let them know when we walked in that door. So we didn't really mess around with the curfew. I know my sister and I didn't. And when we did, we knew we were going to not be able to sneak in because the dog was going to rat us out. So the dog served multiple purposes, and he was an amazing dog, to be honest. And we loved him very, very much. And he was part of our family. So it's a family dog. Sounds like the Alberts also had a love for their dog as well, who they had for over a decade. So this whole nonsense about rehoming the dog immediately after John Okeefe died, very bizarre to me. That just doesn't happen. It's a beloved pet, right? Beloved family work dog that, what was the reason this dog, and there's like, oh, he wasn't good with other people. Well, no shit. That's what they're trained to do. And you know that. So what happened? We can surmise. I've seen the pictures of John O'Keefe's arm, and boy, have I seen those before as a nurse, and I know what the police dogs are trained to do. So one of the other things I wanted to chat about was the grip and hold techniques that these dogs are drilled to do. Typically, if a dog is an untrained large animal, and this I know this from working in the ear, and I've seen a lot of bites, a large trained dog, untrained animal that's not a police dog, when it bites someone, the things you will typically see is you'll see a hand if the hand had gone out. But when they lunge and the dog is scared, those dogs go for the face, neck, okay? They will go for torso. They will go for the jugular. Those dogs, when they're trying to attack, they attack up. And you'll see a lot of people get bit right in here because the dog is going for the face. A police dog won't do that, not typically. What they're going to go for is a containment technique that they're taught in their academy and their training. So they go for grip and hold, grip and immobilize. What they're doing is they go after this area, this area, this area, hand. What they're trying to do typically is if they can get a grip around this area here, they're going to bring someone down to the ground. If they can get the leg, they will typically go for back or side of leg and pull someone down. They are grip, hold, immobilize techniques. And I would ask anybody to do some research. There's a lot of channels on YouTube where you can see the trainings of these dogs. What do you see? What do you see when you see these dogs going for the guys in the big suits? They're always going for the arm to pull down or the leg to pull down. You don't typically see those dogs going for torso, neck, back, face, all of that. That's not what they do. They're trained. And when they are, like I said, they're training 6 to 8 hours a day from little pups on. They know what their duties are, and they know how to immobilize people. And that goes for military dogs, canines, any kind of canine training. You can check me on this one. So grip and hold techniques are part of their training. John Okeefe's bites on his arm. I'm going to call them bites and scratches because to me, that's what it looks like. I see the puncture, I see the claws. I've seen it enough to know what that looks like. So the injuries to John Okeefe's arm to me are consistent with an animal. And people are like, I've heard some chatter online about there not being DNA within the bites, and there wouldn't be, because typically what we do in the ER when someone comes in immediately is we clean them up. There will be a light cleaning, and in all the photos, there's no like frank blood on him. So somebody washed him up a little bit. And that might have been somebody just, scrubbing his arm off for thinking he was going to live, or they cleaned him up a little bit prior to his mother and family viewing him. I don't know. Typically, when I have somebody go into full arrest and then I'm going to bring the family in afterward, I don't leave goopy blood all over the place. If it's not potentially a criminal thing, usually we will clean up a lot of that. And we have to sometimes, especially if there's stuff around the face and nose and we're trying to manage an airway. We don't want to come in contact with frank blood. We will do wipes of certain things, and we also wipe a lot of it off to get to the meat of where is this person injured? Where are the profound blood coming from? Is there anything we need to staunch the blood immediately or stop it from bleeding? If we see the arm is gushing or anything like that, we're going to take some quick giant chlorhexidine and wipe it up. So those kind of things destroy DNA cells that would be within those scrapes and scratches. So I think that he probably was cleaned up before they actually swabbed his body when he went to the morgue. Someone wiped him down. Because initially, remember, people didn't think this was going to be a criminal case. Nobody knew anything. And a lot of times if someone comes into the ER, we will preserve evidence if we're asked to do so. If this just looks like an accident, it's not always paramount. We're worried about the patient, and we do what our job is for that too. So I can't say what was going on in the minds of all of the medical staff. I wasn't there. I can just say that there are variables on how this would go in the emergency department. And John Okeefe's arm, to me, does look like a dog attacked him. It does look like those techniques were deployed. It looks like a dog that was probably from a law enforcement trained dog that went for a immobilization type of task to pull him down. So I don't know. It's just, this is the vibe I'm getting. And if it were me sitting on a jury, I'd be wondering a lot of things right now. And I have so many questions about McCabe. I don't find her credible. I think she sounds like she's trying to explain away too much. And to me, that just she's trying to control the narrative, and you can tell it oozes out of her, and she can't help herself. You can tell she just can't stand it, and she wants everyone to hear her story. That's me. I've never heard her talk before. I have only heard from her today. Carrie came across more credible to me, and Jen McCabe comes across as somebody who has a narrative she wants to get out, whether or not it's true or not. And then when she gets pigeonholed, it seems like she gets frustrated, and you can sense the frustration oozing out of her. I don't know. What do you think? Again, I'm new to this. Haven't watched the first one. I still have questions. I want to know more about this dog, Chloe, and what her training was. As soon as they said German Shepherd, I was like, that's a family police dog. So I want to hear if this dog was trained, if she was a police trained dog. Most of them are, that are living with law enforcement families, because when they wash out of a police academy, most of the time, or canine academy, those dogs are offered up to law enforcement families first and foremost. Some of them might get trained as, what do you call them? Not seeing eye dogs, but service dogs, which can be the case for veterans. I've seen that quite often. But usually the dogs are put into a home where someone is service connected in some way and will understand the needs that dog will have, and vice versa. So there is a general knowledge of how these things work. So my take on that. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is where John's body was found. Let me just back up a little bit, because I actually grew up in Washington, just outside of Washington, D.C. I lived in LA for a number of years with my family. We lived there for 9 years and then came back. So I know that East Coast properties are a little different than California properties. I know that property lines are divided a little bit differently. I learned about, because of the way our yard was, most people in my community I lived in on the East Coast didn't have fences, which we thought was so bizarre. As a California family, we're like, nobody has fences. There's just yard and land for, and there was these areas that were behind the home that were called easements and in front of the homes. Now, in some of the areas in the suburbs, you will find sidewalks. In some areas, you will not. And some of that has to do with snow plowing and everything else and snow removal, and where they put power lines, where they put water lines, where the city's water lines run in association to a community. And what I noticed right off the bat was where supposedly John's body was found. And I would like to find out more about that. I'm trying to stay with fresh eyes, like from a juror perspective. I don't want to deep dive too far into the trial and digging my own stuff. I want to hear things fresh, like the jury is hearing them. So what I have seen is John's body was found towards the street, but not on the street, just far enough in to where a plow would miss him, but also just far enough out where you see the fire hydrant and then you see an electrical pole. If you look at the photos from the trial so far, you can see there's a big green pole and a fire hydrant, and then there's a neighbor's yard with some tree line on the side. It looks to me like John's body was found just mere inches away from the end of the property line and on public property, or what is called easement. Now, when there is an easement on East Coast properties, there is an area that, although you could be like responsible, or you might be the one mowing and handling it, it is actually, you're allowed to use it because it's an easement, but it belongs to the local city, county, or ward, or whatever they're called in that area. So that being that there's a fire hydrant there and that there is a power structure also by that, in relation to where his body was found, it looks like his body was not necessarily on the actual property line of the Alberts, although he was right directly in front of the house. He looks like he was, I'm going to say placed, because it's set to me, his body or just miraculously landed right at the easement juncture, not on the Alberts property line. How weird is that? Do you know what that does? Is if he's on the easement, there's no culpability to the family, right? Because it's not on their property. And you can't sue their homeowners if it's on the easement. So to me, that's weird that he wasn't on the street. He was just in enough to not be hit by a plow or covered by a plow, but he was also far enough out, away enough out to be on an area that might be considered easement. I'd like to know more about that. So to me, I'm riveted. So I am almost done. I actually was listening to the trial this morning on, I listened to Emily D. Baker. I think she's amazing. She's one of my faves as far as on LawTube. And I got to their lunch break. So there's more testimony to go. But this is where I'm at with hearing things for the first time. And I want to hear more. So I've got things to do around the house like I did this morning. And I am going to listen up. I'm going to dig more into medical testimony as time goes on. Put my lips on. And so, yeah, that's where we're at right now. So that's just my unsolicited perspective. We got my Charlotte. Let's do this. Feeling a little sassy today on my day off. Actually, I have to go run some errands. Got my earbuds sitting here charging so that I can listen if I'm in any period of waiting. And yeah, that's it. So I'm ready. This is me. I got to get dressed. And I thank you for listening. So I will see you on the flip side.